Thank you for joining us, Ken. In your perspective, what do the next 10 years in higher education look like?
There's a long answer to that question, but I think the next 10 years, the biggest changes we're seeing in industry, in our society, are largely being driven by big data, by predictive algorithms, artificial intelligence, machine learning. So the advances we're getting in computers' ability to work through big data sets, draw inferences, make predictions, are having impacts on the careers our students are graduating into and the work skills they need, the tools they're going to be working with. But we're also using them in higher ed. So they're being used for student support services, for identifying students at risk, for proactively reaching out with supports for students before the student even realizes they need the support. And I think those are, if there was one thing in the next 10 years, that's probably one of the biggest things we're seeing is a move towards more and more data-driven decision-making and more sophisticated ways of identifying student needs in real time with computer assistance.
And what would you say is the biggest risk that's facing colleges and universities today?
Every college and university is in a different context and has different risks. But I think it's safe to say that the biggest risk right now is for institutions that have a storied history and a respect for tradition to become too wedded to that. One president told me the biggest risk institutions face is being risk averse, that if we're too afraid of change, if we're too afraid of our environments, we don't make the strategic investments, we don't adapt, we don't become flexible. So in a sense, the biggest risk is that we do nothing.
So what would you say is the one takeaway you'd like people to take from your presentation today?
I mean, I think the general gist of what I'm suggesting is that there's been a real movement in the last decade towards social innovation initiatives, towards porous and permeable institutions. And colleges and universities are both moving in this direction now. It used to be, I think, exclusively in the purview of colleges to worry about what industry needs out of our graduates, what applied research opportunities are, how to connect with our communities, how to support local needs. Universities are now playing catch up with the colleges, trying to figure out how do we engage, and there's some there's some leaders in that area for sure, but I think that's what I was largely trying to convey in my presentation was this sense that everything is moving towards porous boundaries, towards collaborations, towards integration with the community, and for institutions, ultimately, our role is to be the catalyst that launches our students out into society to start their own startup social ventures, to start their own businesses, or to play a role in others to make the world a better place. So ultimately, that seems to be what most social innovation efforts are aimed at, is to try to get our students launched to make the world a better place, so maximize their own potential.
So in your opinion, in the next 2 to 3 years, what can colleges do and implement in order to better support our students and our community?
So that's a question I get asked everywhere I go, Lee. And the answer is different at every institution because the students are different at every institution. The context is different. The history of the institution is different. So ultimately, the only one answer to that question would be that what a college needs to do is it needs to really understand its students, its local market, the community, the employers, listen to what their needs are, and be flexible to shift in order to accommodate them. So evening and flexible programming or part-time programming, if that's what your students need. Or maybe it's a different answer for different institutions. But I think listening to our students and adapting to support them is important, and the answer will be different depending on the kind of student that you're talking about. And Bow Valley, I think, has a very, very diverse student body. There's not one answer for your own students. There's going to be clusters of students for whom flexibility of time is critical, for whom affordability is critical, and open textbooks might be the important answer, for whom, let's see, what else could there be? For whom interdisciplinarity or preparation for university transfer might be their priority. So I suspect there's several clusters of students for whom there's different answers. something along those lines would be a good path for any institution.
Well, that's great. Thank you so much, Ken.